The sun sank low over the quiet village of Elmsbrook, its last golden rays slipping behind the rolling hills. The dusty road that cut through the town glowed like molten copper, and on it walked Eli Turner, a young man with calloused hands, worn boots, and a dream bigger than the world around him could see. For years, Eli had been known as the poor blacksmith's boy. He had lost his father young, and since then, he'd worked from dawn till dusk in the old smithy, shaping horseshoes, plow blades, and farm tools just to keep bread on the table for his mother. He was quiet, humble, and fiercely kind, the sort of man who would give away his last coin if it meant easing someone else's burden. But even kindness wasn't enough for Lydia Green. Lydia was the mayor's daughter, beautiful, educated, and raised to believe that wealth determined worth. Eli had loved her since they were children. They'd grown up playing near the old oak by the river, sharing secrets and dreams. He had once believed that she saw beyond his patched clothes and soot-stained hands. One evening, beneath that same oak tree, Eli gathered his courage and told her what his heart had long held. "Lydia," he said softly, his voice trembling with hope, "I know I don't have much, but I'm working hard, and I promise I'll build a life worthy of you." Lydia looked at him for a long moment, her eyes filled not with tenderness, but with pity. Then she sighed. "Eli," she said, shaking her head, "you're a good man, but love doesn't feed a family. I can't tie my life to someone who can't offer me more than hard days and empty pockets." Her words cut deeper than any blade Eli had ever forged. For a moment, he couldn't speak. He only nodded, the lump in his throat too thick to swallow. "I understand," he whispered finally. "Maybe one day you'll see me differently." Lydia turned away, her dress swaying as she walked back toward her father's grand house, leaving Eli standing alone beneath the darkening sky. That night, Eli didn't sleep. He lay awake listening to the wind through the open window, his mother's soft breathing in the next room. Her illness had grown worse over the months. The medicines were expensive, the doctor even more so. And now, even the small flicker of love he'd clung to was gone. But somewhere between heartbreak and exhaustion, something inside him shifted. He realized that he'd been living his life trying to prove his worth to others, to Lydia, to the townsfolk who looked down on him, instead of building something that truly mattered. That night, he made a promise to himself. He would no longer seek approval. He would seek purpose. In the months that followed, Eli's forge became more than just a blacksmith's workshop. He began experimenting, repairing old farming equipment others had given up on, designing new tools to ease the work of the poor farmers around him. He studied late into the night by candlelight, teaching himself from books borrowed from the old library. When drought hit that summer and the river ran low, the villagers were desperate. Crops began to die. Wells dried up. The mayor's men hoarded what little water was left, charging people to fill their buckets. Eli couldn't stand by and watch his neighbors suffer. So he set to work on an idea that had been growing in his mind, a mechanical pump made from spare iron, scrap wood, and pure determination. For weeks, the sound of hammering echoed through the valley. People laughed at him. "The blacksmith's boy thinks he can fix the drought," they jeered. But Eli kept going. Day after day, his hands blistered and burned, his body ached, but he didn't stop. Finally, one morning before dawn, Eli hitched his horse and hauled his strange contraption down to the dried-up riverbed. A few curious villagers followed, whispering among themselves that he installed the pump, wound the gears, and said a silent prayer. Then, he turned the crank. At first, nothing happened. Then came a low rumble, and suddenly water burst forth from the ground, gushing clear and cold into the basin. The people gasped. Children squealed with joy, splashing in the water. Mothers cried. Farmers dropped to their knees, cupping the miracle in their rough hands. Eli just stood there, tears streaming down his soot-streaked face, whispering, "We did it, Papa, we did it." Word spread like wildfire. Within days, people from nearby towns came to see the miracle of Elmsbrook. Eli didn't charge anyone for the water. Instead, he built more pumps, showing others how to make them so every household could have their own. Soon, the once forgotten blacksmith's boy became the pride of the valley. Even the mayor came to see him. Behind him stood Lydia, her eyes wide with disbelief. The same girl who had once walked away from him now watched as men twice her father's age bowed in gratitude before Eli Turner, the man who had saved their village from ruin. That evening, as the sun painted the fields gold once again, Lydia approached him by the river, the same river that had once run dry. "Eli," she whispered, "I was wrong about you. About everything. You've done what no one else could. You've changed lives, you've changed mine." Eli looked at her kindly. There was no anger in his eyes, only quiet peace. "Lydia," he said gently, "you weren't wrong to want more. But I learned that more isn't always about gold or titles. It's about giving, even when you have nothing to give. That's where true wealth lives." Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "Can you forgive me?" she asked. He smiled softly. "There's nothing to forgive." He turned to watch the villagers filling their pails and laughing together. All of this, is enough for me." Weeks later, the mayor hosted a grand feast in Eli's honor. The entire village gathered. Farmers, merchants, children, even travelers who had heard the tale of the poor blacksmith who saved his people. When Eli arrived, dressed simply as always, the crowd fell silent. Then, as if moved by one heart, they all knelt. They knelt not before a man of power or wealth, but before a man of compassion, one who had lifted them all through sheer goodness and determination. Eli's eyes glistened as he looked around him. "Please," he said softly, voice trembling, "don't kneel to me. If you must kneel, kneel to the strength that lives in each of you, the power to care, to help, to give. That's what saved us." The crowd rose, many with tears in their eyes. In that moment, something beautiful happened. The pride, the greed, the class divides that had ruled the town for generations began to fade. People began to see one another not as rich or poor, but as neighbors, as family. And Eli Turner, the boy once rejected for being too poor, became the soul of Elmsbrook, that he rebuilt the smithy into a workshop where young apprentices could learn for free. He cared for his mother until her last peaceful day. And though he never married Lydia, she often came to help with the work, her admiration now rooted in genuine respect. Years later, when travelers came to Elmsbrook, they would hear the story of the man who brought water to the dry valley. They would find his statue near the river, not grand or gilded, but simple, showing him with a hammer in one hand and a jug of water in the other. Beneath it, carved in stone, were the words he had once spoken to the people. "True riches are found not in what you keep, but in what you give." And every child who grew up in Elmsbrook learned his name, Eli Turner, not as the poor blacksmith, but as the man who taught an entire village how to kneel in gratitude and how to rise in kindness.